Greetings and welcome to MentorMe Memorable Moments. I am so excited you have joined me for our financial health segment tonight. I am here with Derry Perkinson Wall Street, we call him. But before I even bring him on, let me say hello to 150 nations and all 50 states. You are in for a treat, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the nations out there too. Anyway, I'm your host, Tracy Everette, and again, this is Financial Health. And Derry, Wall Street, are you on the call with us?
Yes, I am. Tracy, how you doing today?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. You know, I'm kind of excited about this. I'm always excited when you come on board with us. Wall Street is joining us this season, and he came on last season, so you can take a look at some of the tapings with Wall Street. He came in April and in May for the financial health segment, and he answered a question for me that I've been asking this question for quite some time. I knew that this was going on, but I just did not know where this information was, and that was the whole cryptocurrency, digital currency. So if you want to find out what we talked about with this new currency change, then go to our YouTube site and click on Financial Health and find the April and the May broadcast, and we'll be talking about that new currency because we don't want you to be left behind. But Derry, we've got an exciting program tonight.
Yes, we do, and I'm so excited that I'm with you. So let's get to it.
Okay, all right. So tonight's subject with financial health is Great Depression, Great Recession, what's next? And so what we're going to do is take you through all of the depressions and the recessions that we think were pertinent in order to answer that question for you, what is next? Because you need to be ready, not get ready. Be ready for the next financial crash. So, Mike, if you could go ahead and throw those slides up for us, please. Okay, so we want to talk about first, what is a financial crisis? And in short, it's a burst in the stock market or default of a country or crash of a currency. It destroys financial wealth of many investors and causes institutions to lose credibility in the eyes of people. Now, the financial crash, Derry, can be a stock market or foreign nation. Did you want to say a little bit about that?
Yes. What it really boils down to is when we talk about crowds of people are jumping in to a product or a service, and let's take the housing crisis for a moment. In 2008, before the housing took this big plunge, there were so many people that were jumping in. I mean, they were jumping in hand over fist, and all of a sudden, what happened, so many people got in, they couldn't afford the mortgages, and all of a sudden, what happened? 2008, they started defaulting on mortgages. And all of a sudden, that bubble is what we call a bubble. That bubble burst. And once that bubble bursts, and it happens in every product you could think about that's out there today, it happened in history over and over and over again. And we're going to get more into that so people can understand that a crisis is coming.
Yes.
The financial crisis is coming again, but will you be ready?
Right.
That's the whole key to this whole point.
That's right. That's right. We also want to point out too that a financial crisis may not be to that level. It could be maybe you invested in something, you made a bad decision, you lost your money because of that investment. That's a financial crisis to you. So when we go through this program tonight, you'll be able to determine if you've got a financial crisis is more on a personal level, or if this financial crisis is going to be on the global level because of some investments you have. Next slide, please. So how can I prevent a financial crisis? Wall Street just mentioned it to you. You got to take a look at the history. You got to follow the history. History always repeats itself. It always repeats itself. Tweet that out. History always repeats itself. And crisis resurface about every 10 to 20 years, some 30 years, depending on, how well the economy can recover. But for the most part, every 10 to 20 years. So you got to study your past and know your history. Next slide, please. So let's look at the first bubble burst that Wall Street mentioned. And Wall Street, I bet you even know about this, the Dutch golden age of the 1600s. So Um, yeah, 17th century, the Netherlands entered the Dutch Golden Age. You want to talk about that a little bit?
No, go ahead, because you're right. I didn't know about it. The tulips, I have not known about it, but I do know about a rock.
A rock. Okay.
I do know about a rock. Matter of fact, it was on TED Talk last week about this rock, and it's about the same time frame this is going on. So go ahead and talk about this.
Okay, well, back in the 1600s, the Dutch started flourishing in wealth. And so they started becoming a real strong commerce, import-exports, which was great for the country. One of the things that they imported was spices from Asia in huge quantities. And so they displayed their wealth by buying silly things. You know, like today we would exploit our wealth by buying those famous sneakers, $200-300 pair of sneakers, you know. They can't talk, they can't walk by themselves, but we take pride in that. But anyway, they did this by buying little silly things, and they also displayed their wealth by their gardens, how they surrounded their mansions with flowers, and particular flowers that just determined how wealthy that individual was. So there was a high demand for this particular tulip that was imported from the East, and it was considered exotic and difficult to grow because it only grew maybe 2 or 3 months out of the entire year. It returned itself to its bud state, and it hibernated until these 2 or 3 months came around, and then it flourished again. And it grew, and it was very beautiful, and the different colors that it exemplified, you know, just recognized itself as wealth. And so when we look at what Dutch did about this wealth, this tulip had a particular virus that erupted in the 1600s. And so when it budded, it created streaks across the leaflets that really made it striking. I mean, it was unusual. There wasn't any same pattern per se. And so they felt that if they got the tulip, that just kind of resonated well. But if they got a tulip that had this streak, oh my gosh, you could name your price. So the prices began to rise, resulting from the tulip becoming a nationwide success. This erupted into tulip mania. So let's talk about mania real quick before we go to the next slide. A mania occurs when there is an upward movement in price combined with a willingness to pay large sums of money for something valued much lower in intrinsic value. I want you to remember mania. So if we go to the next slide, because they purchased so much of this, and it was, I gotta have it, supply and demand became so much that this streak was really a virus in disguise. And it started killing this tulip. And so people kind of got the aha, or they recognized that, wait a minute now, we're spending too much for a flower, because this flower costs 13,000 florins. So let's say it cost 150 florins, which equaled $25,000 American dollars. They would buy one, or they would trade this florin or this tulip for florins, and just because they could. They were that wealthy. But when the supply and demand ran out, because the people realized, wait a minute, I'm paying this much money, I could pay for a house and a garden a third of what I'm paying for this tulip. They stopped buying it. They had this auction. The vendors came with the boxes of buds and tulips, but none of the people showed up. So the tulip burst, or rather the bubble burst, causing an economic devastation across that nation. So the prices climbed high and fast, and the entire businesses were sold and traded by this tulip. But then after a while, everything just burst. So that's what happened. That's the first burst that is recorded in history that we know of. Do you have any comments about that?
You know, there's one thing that happens in the world today. We get started in something, it goes good, and then all of a sudden, once we get in and we start looking at things, this is, wait a minute, I start to reevaluate, and I'm not willing to spend the money no more.
Yes.
Once you get to that point, I'm not willing to spend the money anymore. And it's not just you, but now it's your neighbors, the next person is the next person. And that's when it's called fight or flight. And that's when they have to fight or flight. Okay. So they flying away. I don't want to do it. And all of a sudden, here comes the crash.
Okay. Now, we pulled out a lot of things from that. That was the first bubble burst in history. Let's put up the next slide and talk about what happened in the 30s. Okay, we've got the roaring 20s where, you know, things were plentiful. Liquor and drugs, the introduction of marijuana and opium and heroin. And I cannot think of the one that kind of makes you feel good and you don't feel any pain. Anyways, that's it, morphine. So we've got the introduction of all of this. We got the jazz clubs and the party cities, and everything is hot and is going on. You know, money is plentiful. This is party time for America. Okay, so then the Great Depression hit. Because American surplus resulted in excessive investments. The stock market was only going up, and that's the perception that people were having. It's not going to fall. It's not going to fall. You know, we're going to continue to make money. It's going to go up and up and up. So people used credit to spend money that they didn't have. And eventually, the banks used the depositors' money. And when the stock market or the products weren't in supply and demand anymore, they started crashing or falling. And eventually, the banks had a run. So next slide, please. So we look at American surplus resulting in excessive investments in the stock market, and people saved over a lifetime and deposited their money into these banks. And the banks took the depositor funds and started betting against the stock market that it would continue to increase. And all of a sudden there was a realization, just like in the Dutch Netherlands with the tulips, there was a realization here that this is not going to last very long. And we're seeing some changes in this. So what we're going to do is we're going to panic and we're going to make a run on the bank because we want our money now. But when they did that, the banks couldn't pay everybody. I don't even know if the banks could pay anybody because the banks had been using the money as well. And then the banks crashed. And so we're looking at the crash of the 1930s. And do you have any comment on that, Wall Street? Wall Street.
You had the savings and loans. There was a lot of savings and loans at that time. People were putting money there, and their homes were tied into that. So what happened? A lot of those people start losing their homes because they couldn't make the payments. The banks couldn't get the money. So that's why you talk to a lot of older people today. They will not get a mortgage. They will pay their house off very quickly. So they want to own their homes because they remember how they lost their homes. Constant, what we saw again in 2009, 10, 11, and 12. People were losing their homes. They did this first back in history in the 1930s, guys.
That's right. That's right. And so we want you to hear what we're saying, that across these depressions are the same issues, the underlining issues are across all of these depressions. So let's put up the next slide and look at the economic boom of the 1970s. So this occurred between the 1950s to the 70s, and it's considered the longest wealth building in the history of America. So national incomes doubled in the 50s and the 60s, and middle class rose to 60%, and women increased in the workforce. Well, why wouldn't there? You know, there was the war, World War II, and there was also the Korean War getting ready to start. So we were gearing up for that as well. And we're still booming during that period of time. So Americans became consumer-aholics, wanting larger homes, vacations, multiple cars, indoor appliances. Wall Street, I can remember my grandmother telling us go outside because the Iceman is coming down the road and get us a block of ice. And then all of a sudden, I can remember my grandfather purchasing an electronic appliance for her called a refrigerator. And she didn't have to get that block of ice anymore because you plugged that refrigerator in and the freezer started getting things cool. Do you have any comments about that?
You know, back in those days also, the dollar was backed by gold. Back in those days.
That's right.
It didn't come off the gold standard until 1971.
Yes, that's right.
But this was a big time in the world. Our money was backed by gold, and a lot of things was going on at that time. So that was a big time in our history in the 1970s.
That's right. And as a matter of fact, if you put up the next slide, Mike, we're going to talk about that 1970s gold history. This was the birth of the fiat. And that is the paper dollar. So we profited from World War II and the Korean War, but we figured out, or we had an aha moment that, wait a minute, we're not as great and wealthy as we think we are because we're still paying on the debts from World War II, and we're also trying to gear up America for this next war, which was the Korean War. We're really in debt here. And so the labor began to shift from agriculture to industry because we figured out how to grow things indoors and how to grow things out of season when we want them. Strawberries didn't have to be grown at a certain time of the year anymore. We could grow them indoors and have all the strawberries that we want, all the peaches and bananas that we want around the full year. And so former President Richard Nixon informed the U.S. gold reserves to reduce the gold reserve ratio from 25% to 0, temporarily suspended the convertibility of the U.S. dollar into gold. This affected Swiss, the British, the Japan, the Euros. They all lost money when that happened. So banks began to have an idea. They started replacing actual savings with cheap invented credit and replaced value of money with central bank proclaimed interest rates. I remember when the first plastic credit card came out and everybody just had to have this credit card. I remember getting a plastic credit card from one of those retail books where you could order shoes and clothes and things out of. And I had a limit of $300, and I ordered me some Italian cut leather shoes. They were beautiful. I love that credit card. Oh, man. But, you mentioned savings and loans. So that was in the 1970s. Let's look what happened in the 1980s. So the financial institution accepted savings deposits and made mortgage, car, and other personal loans to individual members. Now, before they were just doing housing loans, but now they're doing car loans and personal loans to individual consumers. In 1979, the Federal Reserve System of the United States doubled its interest rates that it charged member banks in an effort to reduce inflation. So they're seeing that something is beginning to happen. We need to keep this economy low. We need to keep it affordable. We need to keep people buying things. So let's just double the interest rate. They're already making money. Surely they can afford to pay the double on this now. Well, that wasn't a good idea because rising inflation that began in the 60s, domestic spending, and all those social programs that we didn't even talk about from the 1930s. We had to feed people because they lost their homes. They couldn't eat. They didn't have food or anything like that. So we had those social programs, military expense, rising interest rates, long-term loans at fixed rates. That meant that if you bought a house at 3% during that period of time, and you were contracted at 3% and the economy tanked, they couldn't raise your interest rate because you had a contract for 3%. So anyone coming in behind you could have gotten a contract for 9% or 13%, but you were one of the great guys because you stayed at that 3%. Now, if there was an raise on the taxes, what that home set on, then your monthly interest, your monthly payment was going to go up because of the amount of the taxes that were increased that you had to work with. I'm so sorry. There's a lot going on right now. But anyway, let's take a look at that next slide, the fewer loans. So there was a run on the banks, and banks closed, and people lost their savings. And then there was no bank insurance, and individuals and business accounts vanished. So all your money's gone now with the savings and loans. So production slowed, and businesses could not borrow money. They laid off workers. Unemployment increased. Fewer people had money to buy. The incomes decreased, causing consumers to spend less money. Wall Street.
Yes.
I remember this. I was in Texas when the savings and loans failed, and I would walk the block and see houses, beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous houses, rows of them empty. No one's living in these homes because they couldn't afford to pay for them.
Isn't that something? Their money literally disappeared.
Yes.
It's not like they went to the bank and the bank would not open its doors. They went to the savings and loans. They would not open their doors to get the money out, to allow people to come get their money out of the bank. Mm-hmm. The banks lost all their money. You put $100,000 in the bank yesterday. You go there today, and the money is gone.
Yes.
And they tell you, oh, we don't know what's going on right now. The deposits are delayed. You can't pull any money out. We're closed until next week. Mm-hmm. And next week never comes. Mm-hmm. And it never comes. And it never comes.
Whoa.
Oh, my God. People start committing suicide.
Yes. In
this time. Yes,
right.
I remember some of these things, too.
That's right. And, FDIC was designed to help protect some of the money and to get that money back to the clients, the customers. But, FDIC cannot give you back all your money. So if you put $100,000 in that bank and that bank crashed and you went and complained that you want your $100,000 back, you may not be able to get all that money back because there are other people complaining too. And there's a lot of things going on with that bank and the investments that it has. You may get up to $100,000, but not all the $100,000 back.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. So then, we come
FDIC.
We're coming out of the 1980s into the 1990s where the tech stocks, the dot-coms, began to flourish. And so 1999, 6 huge tech companies had a combined value of $1.65 trillion. The dot-com companies were paying up to $44 million for a Super Bowl ad. I remember those times. Oh, they were vying for those Super Bowl positions in commercial America. But 25% of 457 IPOs doubled in the stock on day one when they went public. When they started trading, millionaires were born overnight. I remember AOL, when they went public, millionaires born overnight. So Declobe.com goes public. The stocks soar to 606%, and then later delisted and closed at 16 cents. Not percent,
yes.
Cents.
I remember people at this time, companies, they didn't even have a product. They did not have nothing to sell. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And their stock went up 20, 30, 40 times with nothing to sell.
This is the era of the technology gold rush. So if we look at the next slide and look at now the global crash that occurred in the dot-com era, Yahoo stock's prices doubled. AOL paid huge for Time Warner. Google goes public. And all of these e-commerce sites started being born, like the eBay and the Amazon.com. And I remember having a store on eBay and creating products to sell. And oh my gosh, it was out there. Everybody selling on these .com sites. But there were a lot of things that went on behind the scenes because not everybody could get a .com site out unless you pieced it together. You get your domain name from here and your website hosting from there and your products from here. I mean, it was just kind of crazy trying to piece it together. But also during this period of time, you see that in 1997 to 1998, Asia financial crisis was fueled by cheap credit. And in 1998 to 1999, Russia financial crisis caused by state debt decreased the value of their ruble. So we have a mess now that's not just kept within the United States. We are now being globally impacted.
That is correct. Everything around us now, we are all interlocked to each other.
Yes.
Every economy is interlocked to the next economy.
That's right. That's right. And so let's take a look at the Great Recession of the millennium. So investors betted against their housing market to decrease in value. Insurance was bought to secure the bet, and the market crashed, and so did the banks. Now, this is like a pattern because they betted against the market and all the other disasters that we recently talked about. So the interest rates were lowered, allowing individuals to purchase more home than they could actually afford. And Twin Towers fell during this. Katrina hit during this period of time, flooding the southern states, and the American economy was devastated. The crash affected Europe, Japan, China, Russia, and the Middle Eastern companies. But let's talk about these home contracts first and people getting into houses that you touched on earlier. I remember this period of time. I was in this period of time where, oh my gosh, money is frequent, is fluent. I got enough, we got enough, what kind of house do we want to buy? And so going to the mortgage broker, they put the contract out. Who really reads all those prints in the contract? Yeah, we can pay this. It's only going to cost this amount of money. Wonderful, we got this. And so we signed one of those contracts, that has those adjustable rate mortgages or has those bubbles in it. We signed that contract at that interest rate. And then a couple of months later, we realized that the monthly mortgage kept going up. It went up, maybe about $200. And then in 6 to 9 months, it went up again about $200. It's like, what's going on? So give me that contract. Let me read this thing. So we're looking at the contract, and we saw Wall Street in the contract. It said that on this date, we're giving you this loan for 1%. Interest, 1% adjustable interest. But at midnight, 1 minute after midnight, your interest rate will be 7%. And then it starts going up every few months to a year after that until it topples off at 29%. Oh my gosh. No, this is not happening. This is not happening. It's not going to happen to us. We immediately refinanced that house and got a firm fixed contract before things got really bad. But it was crazy. This is the kind of loans that they were writing during this period of time.
Yes, I had a couple of homes in Florida that I was paying $2,000 a month, and before 6 months, my mortgage went to $4,200.
Woo! Woo!
There were people in California that would get a shack. I mean, an absolute shack that was paying $1 million.
Yes.
For their property.
That's right.
People just started getting up and just walking away. They just walked away, got their stuff, left the house. There was so many houses. They actually made a movie about this. There were so many houses that were just empty on blocks and more blocks and all around these nice places. And people were walking away from all these homes. They could not pay that mortgage.
And is that movie The Big Short?
It is absolutely called The Big Short. You got it.
Man, you got to see that movie. You have to see that movie to understand what happened in 2008. But also then, again, we mentioned that there was Katrina. The Twin Towers fell. I mean, a lot of things was going on during that millennium period. It's like, are we ever going to recoup and be strong again? And that's when we got our first African-American president. President Obama came in with a plan to stimulate the economy. But you know what? Okay, well, let's just move on. We're going to have time to talk about that one in a minute. Let's get the next slide up, please. So these homes were built on sinking sand. All right. 2015, the National Housing Crisis reported that 18.8 million households are spending over 50% of their income on housing. Wow. We don't stand a chance, do we?
Do not.
10.3 million renters lacked affordable, safe, and well-maintained housing, and 49% of American renters are cost burdened by the affordable housing shortage. But check this out, Wall Street. It takes 102 hours a week or 2 full-time jobs to be worked in order to afford a modest 2-bedroom, I would say, apartment at a fair rate. So people aren't crazy when they say I'm working 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on the table and pay my rent. Yeah, this is happening. This is what the National Housing Crisis reported on. You have to work 2 full-time jobs in order to just find shelter, affordable shelter.
And this basically is happening because of 2 main things. One is called inflation, because inflation is running at a rapid rate that you're not making enough money, enough hours in the day to make those payments. And the second thing is that people, their income has been shifted.
Yes.
Let's take me for an example. I used to be a computer engineer. In 2001. I was making $70,000 a year walking into the door. $70,000, right? Mm-hmm. 10 years later, they start to get these people out of the way, bring in new talent, and pay them $50,000 a year.
Okay.
So the incomes shifted down. They did not go up. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason that it's taken 2 full-time jobs just to try to make it. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, the father used to go to work and the mother stayed home and raised the kids. Right. Now it takes the father and the mother and maybe a part-time job just to make ends meet.
That's right. Wow. So let's take a look at signs of the bubble bursting in our day and age. So in order to do that, let's just put all of these together and find a pattern that you can identify and have that recognized moment. So looking at the signs of a bubble burst in the 1600s, when we talked about that tulip, that bulb, it was rare, exotic. It was something that I gotta have for that status quo. It was supply and demand. You had increased prices in this thing because so many folks wanted it. But all of a sudden, the consumer realized that, wait a minute, I'm paying the cost of a house and a garden for a plant? I don't think so. And so they stopped buying that. In the 1930s, the Great Depression, there was the influx of immigration. Everyone can benefit. Everyone can flourish and be wealthy in America. Just everybody tired, hungry, poor, just come on to the Americas. You can do this. And so there was a lot of partying going on, a lot of the introduction of new ways of making money, whether it was legal or illegal. Everyone had an opportunity to do that. But then the surplus came, and people having money that they thought was in the bank and safe realized that they didn't have the money in there at all when things started getting bad because the banks had been spending their money. And so the economy crashed. There was a realization there that this is not working. So I want my money, but you can't get it. So now we're in a depression. And then when we look at the 1970s, we're in this economic boom now, the longest that we have ever been. It's wealthy. Everything is plentiful. There's a rise in incomes. The commodities there's a shift in the commodities, but they're still there. We can still invest in them. But then there was a realization now that, we're still paying for some previous debts, the war. We have to get ready to pay for another war, and we don't have that much money. And so let's change this currency from the gold to the paper dollar. And we know what the paper dollar is valued at today. Is that still about 73 cents Wall Street?
I think it's a lot less than that.
Oh, my gosh.
I think it's a lot less than 73 cents. You might be looking at maybe 14 cents to 16 cents. And the way you evaluate that, you just you take $100. You went grocery shopping in 2008. This is how you look at it. How you recognize how big inflation took over. Take $100 in 2008. You went and bought a cart full of groceries. Okay? You take that same $100 today and go to the grocery store. How much can you get with $100?
That's right.
You will not fill up that cart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's
you
right.
will not fill up that cart. So it's definitely a lot less than 73 cents. You might get maybe a quarter of that cart full for $100 if you go grocery shopping today. Think about it. A gallon of milk, just 1 gallon of milk. What does it cost today?
Oh, almost $3. A little over $3.
A little over $3, right?
Yeah, that's
so
right.
The only thing that went down around us, the only thing that really went down around us is gasoline. Mm-hmm. Gasoline. It went to $4. It capped out at $4 and some change, and now it's coming down. And depending on what kind of car you drive, if you're using the regular gas, then you're going to be spending about $2.29. Before it was $4.29, right?
That's
so
right.
Now it's $2.29. But everything else, when it comes to food, everything is being shrink wrapped, right? You're getting less of a product inside that bag.
That's right.
Paying the same price.
That's right. Or
the
more.
The same price. It's less in the bag, but you're paying the same price.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at meat, what it's costing for meat. And then if you want quality food, right, with no preservatives, you're going to spend even more money.
That's right.
So inflation is killing the dollar based on what's going on right now, what you're talking about.
That's right. You know what, before I move on, I do want to say something about that gas price. I expect that to go up with all the problems that we're having in Syria and with Russia moving into Syria and the Americans having to go in and protect some of that area. I expect those gas prices to go up again. I do. But now we're also looking at the 1980s where we had the savings and loans. Again, the undercurrent was that, people were spending more money in credit than what they actually had. And there were fixed prices. So there were loans giving out and plentiful. And when the economy tanked, then they couldn't get back all the money that they expected because these were firm fixed loans. And so they had to be creative. And that's when they took your money again out of the savings and loans and spent it without your knowing and charged you double on some other kind of credit and interest that you went out and purchased. But the 1990s was the tech-com. Again, the undercurrent is the birth of the internet. Everybody can make it. You can be wealthy. Now that we're connected across globals, we can sell over to other foreign countries. Just get yourself a website and create your eBay, your Amazon.com, and whatever else it is that you want to sell, and you can do it. Well, it didn't happen that way. The dot-coms fell, and along with that were those investment agencies and firms that had your money. Wall Street.
Oh, I got horror stories.
Oh my God!
These investment companies. When it comes to trading, people think that their money is safe. Oh, it's good. Mm-hmm. The reason why they made the FDIC back in the day is because banks just took all your money and ran away.
Yes.
Investment brokers were stealing money. And this is early as 2005. They were stealing money, and all of a sudden, people had, think about this, guys, millions of dollars in a trade account. Mm-hmm. Millions. Not the average Joe. I'm talking about you may put in $100, $200. You may have your mutual funds tied to that. You did 20 years in this company, and then you go to your mutual fund account, and before you get there, you can't get in. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, you hear the news on TV. This company's under investigation. Mm-hmm. Their whole account has been shut down. The CEO is going to jail. But your money, it may take you 4, 5, 10 years to get back that money.
Woo, this is a sensitive subject.
Horror stories when it comes to. So they're changing the laws to try to get you. To try to get those companies to abide by the right law. So now they got new things came out, SIPC, you got an FDIC for banking, you have this other one for investment. Mm-hmm. So you really have to say, I really want an American company or a well-established company before I invest my money. Just to give you one horror story. I was part of a company that I was trading overseas, and I picked this company. They was giving me great rebates, right? Great rebates. Put in $4,000. A month and a half later, the site is offline.
Oh, my gosh.
The site is gone. The site is absolutely gone. You go back, check it out. There is nobody you can call. Nobody. They took the money and ran.
Oh, my gosh.
You see? So now, that's why when it comes to trading, you have to find a mentor that is using a preferred, let me say this, a guarantee. Well, you can't say guarantee, but you're going to say a well-established firm before you start trading with that firm.
Okay.
You want to have a mentor. Just don't go out there willy-nilly and start throwing up your money to these different companies, and you have no idea where this company is located, what they put on their back, what they put on their front end, and what you see on the website. It may not be the truth.
That's right.
It may not be the truth. Okay?
All right.
So, and the only way you find out this information is from other people that already been trading with them and also receiving money out of the system. See, it's easy to get money in a system, but it's hard as hell to get money out of the system.
Right.
So it all depends on who you're trading with. Just as easy it was for you to put money in, it's supposed to be that easy getting money out. Okay? That's just heads up.
That's right. That's right. And we're going to continue with those heads up. So next slide, please. So when we're looking at the signs of the bubble burst for now, the what next, we're saying you got to be ready. You got to be on top of this. You got to be open-minded to hearing what's going on. If the problem is the currency and that people are taking the currency, because another thing that happened during the 30s, the Great Depression, not just the stock market crashing per se, but you also had the bad guys out there. You had the public enemies out there that knew the money was in the bank, that took the money from the bank, and you weren't getting it back. So now we're here in this digital age. And so what we're looking for now is that this corruption is going to continue. The banks are going to continue to use your money, but you want to be able to know where that money is. You want to be able to get that money back should it ever get taken from you. But you also need to be able to be in the place where you're prepared for this new currency in order to engage in the marketplace, to buy, to sell, and all of that. And if you're not there, you're going to be left behind. So when we look at this next currency, we're looking at the return of the gold and silver. We're looking at diversified investments. This new currency laws are coming up. We now have a realization that something is happening, something is changing, because it's always been funny with the money. Even when in the 70s, they took the money, the gold and the silver too away and gave us fiat paper dollars. And now this paper dollar is dropping and is not worth the paper that they printed on. So we have got to have something better, which is cryptocurrency. And so when we're looking at digital currency exchanges, we're saying that the American fiat, which is the paper dollar, is worth approximately 73% or less. We're going to get those numbers for you. The global fiat changes with the overcoming of new regimes. Every time a country, a nation has a war, a battle, and the regime is taken over, that paper dollar changes. And if you don't believe me, then look at the United States. When we had war of the South against the North, and the North won, what happened to the money, the currency of the South? It was worthless. So that's what happens too. You have criminal activities such as theft and money laundering, and just theft alone costs billions in profit and loss, and they can't trace that money. They can't give it back to the person who's the victim. So there are various online banks that are demonstrating right now a form of digital currency. Digital currency, the language of any computer or any digital language is binary code, is zeros and ones. And you say, well, I don't want to be bothered with that. I don't want to hear about that at all. Well, you're already doing digital currency. Every time you use an eBay or an Amazon.com or you shop online, you're using binary codes, zeros and ones. And so you're already doing it. It's called virtual currency. PayPal, all of those payment vehicles are types of digital currencies. So with the rise of cryptocurrency coming up, then we're looking at using more of the virtual currency. So we have to look at different types of coins, digital coins called cryptocurrency. And with that, we're going to have the ability to get rid of the paper dollar and to exchange using digital coins. Wall Street is the perfect person to talk to about this. He's the one that answered the questions. So Wall Street, do you want to give us a few words on the digital currency era?
Yes, I can. So the biggest deal is when it comes to digital currency, this is why I'm afraid of it. I don't know anything about it. Well, every time you use your credit card, let me ask you a question. When you use your credit card, when you signed your name and they gave you this credit card, did that bank or institution transfer money to your account? The real answer is absolutely not. They did not give you any money. They used credit. They used zeros and ones to say that you now have $5,000, $10,000. But did they transfer any money to any other institution based on that fact? The answer is no. The answer is not. Okay? So the money, the perceived money that you use was digital currency. Okay. So now when you go to the stores and you swipe your card, you're saying you spent this, let's say you spent $100 on this meal. You use digital currency. The only difference now is the dollar bill was tied to your sweat equity. What do I mean by sweat equity? I'm talking about you going to work every single day to help pay off the debt that the United States is in, that our country is in, and every other country is in. They're in national debt. We got $17 trillion of debt. Let me ask you a question. If we have $17 trillion of debt and our gross domestic product that we're sending out is only $16 billion, how do we ever pay off the debt? It's impossible for the United States to pay off the debt. It's impossible. Things are changing right in front of your face ever so slightly because billionaires are starting to move into cryptocurrency. Whether you know about it or not, it's moving to cryptocurrency. Whether it's going to be big, there's over 700 cryptocurrencies out there today. 700 cryptocurrencies. And they doing TED Talks. There are people that's actually educating the public now that, listen, guys, you have to start getting and looking at cryptocurrency because the physical dollar is going to be gone pretty soon, right? So when you go look at your bank account, you're not seeing dollars in your bank account. You're seeing ones and zeros.
That's right.
What your sweat equity is saying that what you have, okay? So now that transition is coming. Digital currency it's not coming. Let me rephrase that. Digital currency is here.
It's here. It is here.
Now, you have to make a decision. Do you want to be a part of this new movement or be left behind, and you're going to catch up maybe many years down the road? But digital currency is here to stay. You got it? Billionaires are going in here for a reason, not because it's a fad. This is not a fad, guys. This is real.
This is
okay?
real. This is real.
Let's leave it at that for right now.
Okay, all right. And so we did show you a slide where there are several different companies, like Wall Street mentioned, that are already in the digital currency or the cryptocurrency phase. I know of one company that we are associated with, and it is the only one coin type company out there that can trace your dollars back and retrieve those things. It's you know what, we're going to talk about that later, but I just want you to make sure that you get that slide and start looking and researching. So you're probably going to ask the next question, well, you know, if I don't buy in, then what will happen? Okay, well, you know, that fiat is going to cost you more just to purchase routine items. We talked about that. That carton of eggs that you used to get for $1 was going to probably cost you about $1.25, $1.50, etc. Just think of yourself going to the dollar store, a real, genuine dollar store. How much more do you think those dollar stores are going to be around? Because they got to see profit too. So if it's 73 cents on a dollar, then believe me, you're going to be paying about $1.25, $1.50 for those items. Okay, then
I can make one comment with this.
Sure.
Let's take your dollar bill for everybody that's out there right now, whatever your dollar is in your country. So let's take your current currency that you're using right now. Is that currency that you have in your pocket, that $100 bill in your pocket right now, in the next 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, next year, is that value of that dollar going to go up? The answer is no.
No.
The answer is no. However, digital currency, and 4 months ago, let's take Bitcoin for an example. 4 months ago, it was worth $426, and then it went to $726. So that's a $300 push on digital currency. That gave you more buying power. They gave you more money to use for the grocery shopping. I can open up more brokerage accounts. You know, people are using digital currency now in almost everything out there in the world today. I can actually open up a trade account with Bitcoin, right? Now, OneCoin overseas in Japan and Asia, right now, OneCoin, there are people in Japan that is using OneCoin to pay their light bill.
Yes.
Imagine them getting started with 50 cents value at the time, half a euro, okay? And now, 2 years later, that euro is worth 6.95 euro. You got some at 1 euro, now it's 6.95, almost 7 euros right now. What does that mean? More buying power,
All right.
more things you can do with it. Your dollar is not going to move like that.
Right.
That's the difference with cryptocurrency, guys. You got to get a hold of it. You got to see what's really going on in cryptocurrency because it's going to change your life. I'm going to go ahead because I know we're getting short on time.
So let me wrap up these 3 slides by doing this very quickly. One of the things that we would highly recommend to you is that you stay clear of the consumer debt. That will keep you from being pressured or to repay a loan should the economy crash. Try to pay down your mortgage as much as you can to avoid being placed in a risky situation where you become homeless, and start saving money. $5, $3, $10, whatever it is, start saving that money. If you don't want to put it in a bank, that's fine. Put it in a cookie jar or under the mattress or a floorboard. Just save money. You're going to need it. Diversify your investment portfolio, your stocks, your bonds, your mutual funds, your money markets, your real estate, your commodities like gold and silver. Diversify those. And don't get too excited at the next new thing that happens. I need you to stop and think, do your research, and seek counsel. And then if you're in it, know when to escape before it bursts. So don't panic, because that's what they did across these depressions. People panicked and had a run on the bank. Don't panic. It's going to be all right. Life has ups and downs. Set aside some savings that you are not afraid to lose in the event of a crisis. Let me say that again. Set aside savings that you are not afraid to lose in the event of a crisis. So the question is, are you getting ready? No. Be ready. Are you ready for the next currency change or the next bubble burst to come? Focus on what is happening around you. Be mindful. Be aware. Be ready. Okay? Have a plan. So, Wall Street, I think we've done our job.
I think we did also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Our theme for this season is to help you be ready. And so we're going to be coming back again to talk to you a lot more about investments, commodities, what's happening out there globally, how it's impacting the United States, how it's going to impact you as well. So I want you to tune into us the third Sunday of every month for financial health. And again, this is Derry Perkison, we call him Wall Street, and his segment is From the Projects to Wall Street. And I'm your host, Tracy Everette Duncan. And between now and then, we want you to be safe, be smart, and be healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey! Hey, 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 hey! Oh, God! Well, I wear my clothes like this because I can. And I wear my hair like this because I can. And I walk around like this because I can. And I do my thing like this because it's who I am. And if you expect me to give you an apology for being nothing that you're used to, that means I'm off. When I dance to the beat of a drummer you don't hear and you can't see. So if I look offbeat to you, well, the problem must be you, not me. Irregular but never irrelevant.